You never really forget the first time you see Karen in her natural habitat, making demands no ordinary person would dare to utter. Mine didn't happen in a grocery store or a neighborhood HOA meeting, it happened in a Ferrari dealership. Before I dive in, make sure you subscribe to the channel for more unbelievable true-life revenge stories. You won't want to miss what comes next. I was working as the assistant sales manager at Rossetti Motors, a luxury car showroom just outside Los Angeles. For 3 years, I'd lived and breathed cars most people only dreamt of: sleek Ferraris, roaring Lamborghinis, and a McLaren or two that could stop traffic with a single rev. My job wasn't just about selling cars, it was about selling prestige, confidence, and exclusivity. People who walked through those glass doors weren't just customers, they were dreamers, status seekers, or collectors. Some were humble and polite, knowing they were stepping into a world that few ever reached. Others strutted in, ready to show off bank accounts fatter than a phone book. But nothing, absolutely nothing, prepared me for the woman who stormed in one scorching Saturday morning. She was in her mid-40s, blonde hair teased into an immovable helmet of hairspray, oversized sunglasses that screamed discount designer, and an outfit that tried very hard to be Beverly Hills chic but fell flat somewhere around a suburban mall clearance rack. She didn't walk in, she marched, as though the very showroom was built for her arrival. "Excuse me," she snapped, snapping her fingers as though I were a waiter. "I need a red Ferrari. Now." I blinked, trying to place her. "Good morning, ma'am. Welcome to Rossetti Motors. Do you have an appointment?" She lowered her sunglasses, glaring at me as though I'd just insulted her ancestors. "Do I look like I need an appointment? My husband owns half this town. I'll take that one." She jabbed her manicured finger toward a gleaming Ferrari 488 Spider, cherry red, polished so perfectly you could check your makeup in it. Price tag? $310,000 before taxes. Normally, buyers came in with questions about specs, financing, and waiting lists. But this woman, Karen, though I didn't know her name yet, acted as if she was ordering fast food. "Of course," I said smoothly, keeping my professional mask on. "Are you looking to purchase outright, or would you like to discuss financing options?" Her eyes narrowed. "I'm not paying for it. My HOA covers my lifestyle expenses. You can put it under their account." I nearly choked. "I'm sorry, did you say you're HOA?" "Yes, the Lakeside Vista Homeowners Association. They owe me for all the stress they've caused. Consider this a settlement. Now, chop chop, get the paperwork started. I don't have all day." Behind me, one of our mechanics coughed to cover a laugh. Another salesperson leaned in just enough to listen. This was new, even for us. "Ma'am," I said carefully, "Ferrari purchases don't quite work that way. You can't charge a car to an HOA." Her lips pursed. "Watch me. They wouldn't even exist without me. I practically run that community. If they can waste money on landscaping and repainting fences, they can buy me a Ferrari. Do you know who I am?" At this point, I was struggling between maintaining professionalism and bursting out laughing. I'd seen entitled customers before, but Karen was in a league of her own. She snapped her fingers again. "Get the manager. And bring me a cappuccino. Skim milk. Extra hot. Don't make me wait." I excused myself, heading toward my manager's office. John, our general manager, was a seasoned veteran who'd dealt with billionaires, celebrities, and every eccentric client imaginable. But even he raised an eyebrow when I explained. "She wants the HOA to pay for a Ferrari," he repeated slowly. "That's what she said. Claims it's her settlement." John chuckled, rubbing his temples. "All right, let's see how far she's willing to take this circus." We walked back out together. Karen was pacing the showroom like she owned it, tapping her phone furiously. She looked up and immediately launched into her tirade. "Finally. Someone in charge. I'll take the Spider. Bill the Lakeside Vista HOA. They'll confirm it." John nodded politely, folding his hands. "And how exactly should we contact them?" Karen flashed a smug smile. Call the president, Thomas Green. Tell him Karen approved the purchase. He'll understand. My stomach dropped. I knew that name. Thomas Green wasn't just the president of Lakeside Vista HOA, he was one of our existing clients. He'd bought a Maserati from us the year before, and he was meticulous about his reputation. If Karen thought she could drag him into this mess, she was about to get the shock of her life. John glanced at me knowingly, then said, "Of course, ma'am. We'll give him a call right now." Karen leaned back, arms folded smugly, as though victory was already hers. Good. And make it quick. I want the car delivered to my driveway this afternoon. I walked to my desk, dialed Thomas Green's number, and put the call on speaker so Karen could hear. After a few rings, he picked up. Thomas Green. Hello, Mr. Green, this is Daniel from Rossetti Motors. I have a client here who says the HOA will be covering the cost of a Ferrari 488 Spider on her behalf. There was a pause on the other end. Then, a deep sigh. Is her name Karen? Karen smirked. See? He knows me. Thomas's voice hardened. Put me on speaker. You're already on speaker, I said. Thomas didn't waste time. Karen, what on earth are you doing? The HOA isn't your personal piggy bank. You've already caused enough problems with your ridiculous demands. A Ferrari? Are you insane? Karen's face went crimson. Don't you dare speak to me like that. I'm the reason this neighborhood has standards. You'll regret this, Thomas. Everyone in Lakeside Vista owes me. The line went dead as Thomas hung up. Karen stomped her foot like a toddler. This isn't over. I'll get my Ferrari, one way or another. And when I do, you'll all be sorry. As she stormed out, every eye in the showroom followed her. None of us knew it yet, but this was just the beginning. Karen's shocking demand wasn't just absurd, it was about to spark a feud that would pull me, the dealership, and the entire HOA into chaos we never imagined. The next morning, I arrived early at the dealership. The sunlight bounced off the crimson Ferraris lined up outside like a fleet of exotic jewels, and inside, the polished showroom floor gleamed. The smell of leather and new engines filled the air, a scent that always gave me energy to face the day. But I had no idea the storm that was about to roll in. At 10:15 sharp, she walked in again. Karen. Her blonde hair was tied in a high bun, her oversized sunglasses perched on her head like a crown, and she wore a bright pink tracksuit that screamed for attention. This time, she didn't bother with pleasantries. Where's your manager? She snapped, ignoring me completely. I cleared my throat. Good morning. Can I help you with, manager? Now, she cut me off, her tone sharp as broken glass. Within seconds, Mr. Donnelly appeared from his office. He was a calm, polite man in his early 50s, with graying hair and a reputation for patience. Even he looked uneasy as Karen marched toward him. Are you the manager? Good. Then you'll understand. I came yesterday, and your employee here, she jabbed a manicured finger at me, was extremely rude. I was trying to buy a car. A Ferrari. And he treated me like some nobody. My mouth fell open. Ma'am, with respect, you, don't interrupt me, she barked, her voice echoing across the entire showroom. Customers browsing the cars turned to watch. I came here with full intention of buying, and this boy tried to embarrass me. You'd better fix this. Mr. Donnelly raised his hands in a placating gesture. I'm sorry you feel that way, ma'am. But buying a Ferrari does require certain steps. Karen let out a laugh so loud and fake it could have come from a bad sitcom. Steps? Oh please. I've bought cars more expensive than this. I can pay cash right now. That caught everyone's attention. Even I hesitated. Pay cash? On a Ferrari? That was nearly $300,000. Karen smirked at me like she had just won a round in some invisible game. That's right. Cash. Do you understand what that means? but instead of producing proof, she pulled out her phone and started scrolling. Then, she held up the screen triumphantly. See? Bank account. Enough to buy 10 of these. Now, are you going to sell me the car or not? I squinted at the screen. Something didn't add up. The numbers were there, yes, but the name on the account wasn't hers. It was blurred by her thumb, almost deliberately. Mr. Donnelly noticed too, but being the professional he was, he tried to steer the conversation gently. Ma'am, I don't doubt your means. But Ferrari has specific requirements for ownership. You'll need to show financial documentation, agree to the ownership contract, and Karen slammed her hand down on the receptionist's desk so hard the pen holder rattled. Do you know who I am? The words cut through the air like a blade. She said them with the authority of someone who expected the world to bend. Mr. Donnelly remained calm. I'm afraid I don't, ma'am. Her face flushed crimson. I am Karen Williams. My husband is on the board of this community. We practically run half this town. If I want this car, I'll have it. And if your little employee here doesn't apologize and hand me those keys, I'll make sure this place gets shut down. My heart pounded. Customers whispered among themselves, some chuckling, others pulling out phones. This scene was spiraling out of control. I stepped forward, trying to keep my voice steady. Ma'am, with all due respect, this isn't about me or you. Ferrari ownership comes with conditions. You can't just walk in, throw money around, and drive one home. It doesn't work like that. The veins in her neck bulged. Excuse me? Are you saying I'm not worthy? Mr. Donnelly intervened quickly. Nobody is saying that. But we do have a process. Karen's lips curled into a sneer. Fine. You'll regret this. Both of you. She turned on her heel and stormed out, her heels clicking furiously against the marble floor. The moment the door shut, the entire dealership exhaled at once. One of the junior salesmen whispered, "Was that real life?" Another chuckled. She sounded like a villain from a TV show. Mr. Donnelly sighed, rubbing his temples. Daniel, I need you to stay professional no matter what. We can't afford scenes like this. But, something tells me she's not done. He was right. Because the very next day, Karen came back. Not alone this time. She returned with a man in a tailored navy suit, her husband, I presumed, and 2 other people dressed like lawyers. She walked in with the smug confidence of someone about to win a war. Well, she announced loudly, so everyone in the showroom could hear, I gave you a chance. You embarrassed me. Now my lawyers will handle it. And that was the moment I realized, Karen's shocking demand wasn't just about buying a Ferrari. No, she had a much bigger game in mind. Karen's face grew redder with each second of silence that hung between her and me. The sales manager, a man named Victor with slicked back hair and a gleaming smile that was just a bit too practiced, shifted uncomfortably. He clearly didn't know how to handle her any more than I did. Ma'am, Victor tried again, his voice painfully polite, we have a very clear policy regarding purchases. The individual on the paperwork must be the individual providing payment. Unless you can prove ownership of his account, Karen snapped her fingers in front of his face, as though he were a waiter at a cheap diner. Do I look like I need to prove anything? I own this block. Everyone knows me. That man, she jabbed a finger toward me, doesn't even live here properly. He rents. He doesn't deserve that Ferrari. I deserve it. So, write it under my name and hand me the keys. I couldn't help myself, I laughed. Not a small chuckle either, but a full, sharp laugh that echoed through the quiet showroom. The other customers turned to stare, a few whispering behind their hands. Karen whipped her head toward me. You think this is funny? Oh, Karen, I said, still catching my breath, you've outdone yourself this time. First, you block my driveway. Then, you complain about the color of my fence. And now, you walk into a Ferrari dealership demanding my car as if you're some kind of queen. Do you even hear yourself? The look she gave me could have burned holes through steel. Victor raised his palms, trying to diffuse the tension. Perhaps we should all take a step back. Mr. Collins, he turned to me, if you'd like to proceed with your paperwork, we can finish this in my office. As for you, Ms. Karen, she barked. Yes, Ms. Karen. Unfortunately, unless you are listed as the buyer, there's nothing we can do. Karen's eyes narrowed, and for the first time, I saw something flicker in her expression, something that looked like desperation. Her voice dropped, no longer loud and commanding, but almost pleading. You don't understand. My husband left me last year. My son won't even talk to me. I need that car. It will show everyone I'm still someone. That I still matter. The showroom grew uncomfortably quiet. Even Victor didn't know what to say. I took a breath, torn between sympathy and anger. Part of me wanted to brush it off as another Karen tantrum, but there was another part, a softer part, that recognized the pain behind her words. Still, sympathy didn't erase her cruelty. Karen, I said firmly, needing validation doesn't mean you get to take what isn't yours. Life doesn't work that way. Her jaw tightened. The softness was gone in an instant, replaced once again by venom. Fine. If you won't hand it over, I'll ruin you. I'll call the HOA. I'll have them fine you for every little violation. Your trash bins, your porch light, your lawn. You'll drown in fees until you beg me to take that Ferrari off your hands. The crowd murmured. Some shook their heads in disbelief, others looked almost entertained, as though this had become some live soap opera. Victor cleared his throat and spoke with finality. That will be enough. Miss Karen, I'm going to have to ask you to leave. Her head whipped around, eyes bulging. You can't kick me out. Do you know who I am? Yes, Victor said calmly. You're a disruption to my clients. Security will escort you if necessary. Two suited guards, who had been lingering near the doors, began to approach. Karen took a step back, her bravado slipping. For a second, I thought she might actually back down. But instead, she pointed at me again, her hand trembling. This isn't over. You'll regret humiliating me today. That car will be mine, one way or another. And with that, she stormed out, her heels clicking furiously against the polished tile. The moment she was gone, the atmosphere in the showroom lifted. A few people clapped quietly, others chuckled. Victor let out a long sigh and gave me a weary smile. I've seen difficult clients before, he said, but that was something else. I shook my head. You have no idea. She's the nightmare neighbor everyone warns you about. We finished the paperwork without further interruption, and soon enough, the keys to my Ferrari were in my hands. Sliding into the driver's seat, I felt a surge of pride and relief. But Karen's last words haunted me. This isn't over. I knew, deep down, she wasn't bluffing. The following morning, the dealership was buzzing in ways I hadn't seen before. It was as though Karen's outburst the day before had become an invisible storm cloud hovering over every corner. Sales associates whispered in hushed tones. Mechanics shook their heads when I passed by. Even our receptionist, Amanda, who could usually find the silver lining in any situation, avoided eye contact with me. I poured myself a coffee in the staff lounge, trying to shake the image of Karen's face as she stormed out. It wasn't just her fury, it was the unsettling confidence she carried, as though she already had something planned. That confidence worried me more than her threats. Later that afternoon, I got my answer. A black SUV rolled into the lot and out stepped three men in suits. They weren't customers. Their stiff, calculated movements and the way they immediately flashed identification cards told me exactly who they were, compliance officers from the Department of Consumer Affairs. Mr. Carter, one of them asked, his tone all business. Yes, I replied cautiously. We received a complaint about your dealership. Allegations of discriminatory sales practices. The words hit like a punch to the gut. My coworkers froze where they stood, pretending to shuffle papers or clean desks, but I knew they were listening to every syllable. Discriminatory sales practices. The phrase echoed in my head. Karen. This had her fingerprints all over it. May we speak in your office? The lead officer asked. I nodded and guided them inside, my palms sweating. They began their questions methodically. Had I ever denied service to a customer? Did I treat certain buyers differently? Did I set conditions that weren't part of official policy? No, I answered firmly, though my voice betrayed the pressure I was under. One officer flipped through a notepad. The complaint states that a customer was humiliated in front of others and told they weren't qualified to buy vehicles from this dealership. Specifically, a Ferrari. My jaw tightened. There it was. Karen's version of events. Twisted, exaggerated, weaponized. With all due respect, I said carefully, that customer was not qualified, financially, I mean. We run checks, as per protocol. It's not discrimination. It's a policy. The officer scribbled something down but remained neutral. We'll be reviewing your records. In the meantime, you may continue operations, but we'll need full access to sales logs and recorded footage. After they left, my boss, Mr. Henderson, pulled me aside. His face was pale, his jaw set tight. Do you realize what this means? He hissed. A complaint like this can destroy our reputation. If this goes public, we'll be branded as elitist, discriminatory, everything Ferrari tries to avoid. I didn't do anything wrong, I insisted. Doesn't matter, he snapped. Perception is reality in this business. And thanks to you, the perception right now is poison. The weight of his words pressed down hard. I wanted to defend myself further, but something stopped me. Deep down, I knew Karen wasn't finished yet. This was just the opening move. That night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, my mind running circles. She wanted more than just a car. She wanted leverage. She wanted to bend people into submission, and I was her latest target. The next morning, my fears were confirmed. A local news van was parked outside the dealership. A reporter, microphone in hand, stood on the sidewalk speaking directly into the camera. Behind her, the Ferrari logo gleamed in the sun. A shocking claim against a luxury dealership in our city, she said. One woman alleges she was denied the chance to purchase a vehicle based solely on appearance and was publicly ridiculed in front of other customers. The dealership denies wrongdoing, but investigators are now involved. I froze, bile rising in my throat. She'd gone public. She'd turned herself into the victim, parading her false story as truth, and the cameras ate it up. By lunchtime, customers had stopped walking through the doors. Appointments were canceled. A social media storm erupted online, hashtags trending with phrases like hashtag Ferrari bias and hashtag luxury discrimination. It was a nightmare spiraling out of control. Mr. Henderson stormed into my office, his face red with fury. Fix this. Now. I don't care how. You're the one she's targeting, so you're the one who has to shut her down. If you don't, you won't have a job by the end of the week. The ultimatum rang in my ears long after he left. How could I fix this? How could I fight someone like Karen, who had already proven she was willing to lie, manipulate, and weaponize the system to her advantage? Then I remembered something: security footage. Our dealership had state-of-the-art surveillance. Every square inch of the showroom was covered. If I could get access to the recordings from the day she caused her scene, maybe I could prove my side. After hours, I returned to the dealership, slipping into the surveillance room. Rows of monitors displayed live feeds, but it was the archive I needed. My fingers shook slightly as I navigated through the system, pulling up footage from the day of Karen's visit. There it was, her grand entrance, her loud demands, the stunned faces of customers, and finally, her meltdown when I refused to hand her the keys without proper paperwork. I watched it 3 times, each time catching more detail. The way she shoved past a customer, how she raised her voice aggressively, how she pointed at me as though I were beneath her. There was no trace of discrimination. Only entitlement. I exhaled for what felt like the first time in hours. This was my weapon. My chance to turn the tide. But as I prepared to download the footage onto a drive, a thought chilled me to the bone. What if Karen anticipated this? What if she already had a plan to discredit even the video evidence? Something told me the battle wasn't going to end with proof. It was going to escalate far beyond anything I'd ever imagined. The next morning, I arrived at the dealership earlier than usual. The sun hadn't fully risen, and the glass panels still reflected the street lamps outside. My gut told me Karen wasn't finished. People like her thrived on control, and last night's stunt proved she had resources. Sure enough, before opening hours, a black SUV pulled up across the street. Two men stepped out, not in uniforms but in the kind of suits that screamed corporate muscle. They weren't there to buy a car, that much was obvious. They lingered, watching the dealership doors, one speaking into an earpiece. I pretended not to notice, but my phone buzzed. It was Mark, our sales director. "Ethan, listen. I don't know what you did yesterday, but Karen's threatening to pull her investment in the dealership group if we don't cooperate. She's got influence higher up. Be careful." I sighed, rubbing the back of my neck. "She can threaten all she wants, Mark, but I'm not about to sell a Ferrari under duress." But deep down, I was unsettled. How far would she push this? Around 10 a.m., Karen herself strutted in again. No appointment, no courtesy, just breezing through the door like she owned the place. She wore oversized sunglasses, the kind that hid half her face, and carried a designer handbag I'd bet could buy someone's yearly rent. "Ethan," she sang out, her voice dripping with false cheer. "I hope you've had time to reconsider." I forced a professional smile. "Good morning, Karen. As I said yesterday, Ferraris are sold through an application process. You don't bypass it by throwing tantrums." Her smile faltered. "Do you know who I am?" "Yes," I replied calmly. "And I also know who Ferrari is. Rules don't bend for anyone." The two men in suits entered just then, standing behind her like shadows. The message was clear: intimidation. Karen leaned across my desk, lowering her voice. "Either you process my order today, or I'll make sure you don't work in this city again. Do you understand me?" I looked her straight in the eye. "Karen, threatening me won't get you a Ferrari. But it might get you escorted out." She blinked, stunned for a moment, before her mask of arrogance returned. "You'll regret this." With that, she snapped her fingers at the men behind her, and the trio stormed out. The rest of the day was tense. Customers came and went, but my mind kept circling back to Karen's threat. That night, I drove home slower than usual, scanning my mirrors. By the third day, things escalated. When I arrived at work, I found spray-painted words on the side wall of the dealership: "Fakes don't deserve Ferraris." The security cameras showed two masked figures, her hired goons, no doubt. Corporate flew in a regional manager, a polished man named Steven who cared more about brand image than human safety. "Ethan," he said, pacing my office, "this is bad for publicity. We don't need scandals tied to exclusivity. Maybe just let her have one. Quietly. Solve the problem." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "So you're telling me to break Ferrari policy just to keep one entitled woman happy? That's not solving the problem, it's feeding it." Steven exhaled sharply. "Sometimes compromise is better than a battle." But I refused. Karen didn't want a Ferrari because she loved cars, she wanted it because she thought it would prove her superiority over the world. Giving in would destroy everything Ferrari stood for. That evening, as I was about to lock up, a surprise walked through the door, not Karen, but a man in his early 40s. Tall, composed, wearing an impeccably tailored suit. He introduced himself as Richard Marino, Karen's husband. "I'm here to apologize," he said, extending a hand. His voice was calm, but his eyes betrayed exhaustion. "My wife, she can be difficult. I heard about the incidents." I shook his hand cautiously. "With respect, Mr. Marino, it is difficult to begin to cover it. She vandalized property. She threatened me. That's criminal." He nodded slowly. "I know. I've tried to rein her in, But Karen doesn't listen. She's been chasing status for years, and frankly, she thinks money is the key to everything. If she doesn't get that Ferrari, she'll make hell for everyone. Something about the way he spoke, resigned, almost defeated, told me this wasn't the first time she'd pulled something like this. Mr. Marino, I said firmly, Ferrari isn't about money. It's about respect. And right now, your wife isn't showing any. He sighed deeply, rubbing his temple. I understand. But you should know, she's not going to stop. She'll double down. And if she drags my name into it, it'll ruin me too. I leaned back, considering. Then maybe it's time someone showed her that money can't buy dignity. Richard studied me, then gave a faint, almost relieved smile. Ethan, you might be the first person who's ever told her no and meant it. Don't give in. And with that, he left. The next morning, Karen returned once again, but this time her approach was different. She arrived alone, no guards, no entourage. Her sunglasses hid her expression, but her voice was sharper than ever. You think you're clever, don't you, Ethan? You think you've beaten me. But this isn't over. I'll destroy your career, your reputation, everything you've built here. I didn't flinch. Karen, the only thing you're destroying is your own credibility. People see through you. For the first time, her smile cracked. She stood frozen, glaring at me, before finally turning on her heel and storming out once more. But I knew it wasn't the end. The storm was just gathering strength. Karen's confidence seemed unshakable, but in truth, cracks were beginning to form. Behind her dramatic gestures and high-pitched declarations, I could see the flicker of doubt in her eyes. The Ferrari dealership had turned into a stage, but it wasn't her performance that was winning applause. It was the dealership staff's quiet professionalism and the steady patience I'd forced myself to maintain. The assistant manager, Mr. Lee, walked back toward us, a thick folder in his hand. We've reviewed all the paperwork, he said evenly. And I can confirm once again, there's absolutely no order under Ms. Karen's name. Karen slammed her purse on the counter with a loud thud. That's because my assistant placed the order, she snapped, glaring at me. You'll find it under his details. I leaned back, suppressing the urge to roll my eyes. Karen, I said softly, you never had an assistant. You couldn't even manage your HOA budget without triple-checking the numbers. Let's not start inventing imaginary employees. The crowd chuckled again, and Karen's cheeks flushed crimson. But still, she didn't back down. Fine, she spat. Then I'll call my lawyer. I'll have this whole dealership sued for fraud and for wasting my time. Mr. Lee sighed, clearly done with her antics. Miss Karen, you are free to call whoever you want. But we have actual records, signed contracts, payment history, delivery notes. Those documents don't lie. That's when I decided it was time to reveal my ace. I reached into my briefcase and pulled out a slim folder of my own. Since we're talking about records, perhaps we should also address these, I said, sliding the folder across the desk. Karen frowned and snatched it open. Her eyes darted across the pages, and for the first time that day, I saw the mask of arrogance completely shatter. The folder contained copies of her HOA financial reports, doctor numbers, missing receipts, and unexplained withdrawals that had been conveniently buried in obscure footnotes. You've been siphoning HOA funds for months, I continued, my voice sharp now. Do you really want to take this to court? Because I can promise you, it won't just be about a Ferrari anymore. The silence that followed was deafening. Even the other customers, who had been laughing along, leaned in closer. They knew a bombshell had just been dropped. Karen's lips trembled. Why, you don't know what you're talking about, she stammered, clutching the folder to her chest like a lifeline. Oh, I do, I said. And so will everyone else once I forward these documents to the state auditor. Unless, of course, you'd like to make things right, here and now. Her bravado crumbled completely. She glanced desperately at the crowd, at the dealership staff, at me. But there was no sympathy left for her. Finally, she muttered, What do you want? The room seemed to hold its breath. I leaned forward. You're going to walk out of here quietly. You're not going to harass this dealership again. And most importantly, you're going to resign from the HOA board before the end of the week. Karen's eyes widened. Resign? You can't force me. I can, I cut in. And I will. Because if you don't, those documents will be on the auditor's desk first thing Monday morning. And believe me, the penalties for financial fraud will make losing your precious status in the neighborhood look like child's play. The tension in the air was electric. Karen looked around one last time, searching for an ally, but found none. Defeated, she grabbed her purse off the counter, shoved the folder back toward me, and stormed toward the exit without another word. The dealership erupted into a wave of whispers and relieved laughter. Mr. Lee shook his head, letting out a long breath. I've dealt with difficult customers before, he said, but that was something else. I smiled faintly, sliding the folder back into my briefcase. Karen thrives on spectacle. The only way to win is to end the performance. The crowd slowly dispersed, but the impact of what had happened lingered. Karen, the self-proclaimed queen of the neighborhood, had been publicly humiliated, and not just for her ridiculous Ferrari stunt, but for the corruption she thought she had hidden so well. As I walked out into the bright afternoon sun, I couldn't help but feel a surge of satisfaction. But deep down, I knew this wasn't the end. Karen wasn't the type to give up easily. She'd lick her wounds, rebuild her pride, and sooner or later, she'd come looking for revenge. The question was, would I be ready? I tightened my grip on the briefcase. Yes. I'd be ready. Because Karen might have thought she was untouchable, but I had just proven she wasn't. And the game was only just beginning. The fallout from the HOA's courtroom defeat spread through the neighborhood like wildfire. News had already traveled fast thanks to local reporters covering the case, but what shocked everyone more was how quickly the community began shifting its loyalties. For years, the HOA board had ruled with an iron fist, issuing fines for trivial things, threatening homeowners with liens, and bullying anyone who dared resist. But now, their mask has been ripped away. Neighbors who once whispered their frustrations in secret started speaking openly. Some marched up to me during my morning walks, clapping me on the shoulder, thanking me for standing my ground. You didn't just win for yourself, one older gentleman told me. You won for all of us. But not everyone shared that sentiment. Karen, the board president, was more furious than ever. She and her loyalists doubled down, calling emergency meetings and sending out desperate newsletters to the community, warning that my victory would set a dangerous precedent and that the HOA's authority was under attack. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. Their authority was the very reason people had been miserable for years. Still, Karen wasn't ready to surrender. One evening, as I pulled into my driveway, she was waiting on the sidewalk, arms crossed, eyes burning with indignation. This isn't over, she hissed. You think a judge's ruling makes you untouchable? We still have power here. And believe me, we'll find a way to make your life miserable. I didn't flinch. Karen, you've already tried everything. And you failed. Maybe it's time you accept that your reign is over. Her lips tightened into a thin line, and without another word, she stormed off. The next week, the HOA tried a new tactic, financial sabotage. They attempted to raise everyone's monthly dues under the guise of legal expenses caused by my lawsuit. The audacity was laughable. But this time, the homeowners fought back. At the next community meeting, the room was packed. Dozens of neighbors showed up, some who hadn't attended a meeting in years. Voices rose as people demanded transparency, asking why they should pay for the board's personal vendetta against one homeowner. You brought this on yourselves, one woman shouted from the back. You wasted our money going after him, and now you expect us to cover the bill? Karen banged her gavel, trying to restore order, but the crowd had turned against her. For the first time, I realized something crucial: the HOA board's power only worked when people were too afraid to resist. Now that fear had cracked, their empire was crumbling. Still, I wasn't content with just defending myself. I wanted to ensure they could never pull this on anyone else again. So, with the encouragement of several neighbors, I began looking into the HOA's financial records. Since the court had already ruled in my favor, I had legal grounds to request transparency. And what I uncovered was even worse than I imagined. Thousands of dollars had been misused, lavish dinners charged to the HOA account, consulting fees paid to friends of board members, and unexplained withdrawals that no one could justify. I gathered the evidence into a neat file and shared it with the community. Gasps and murmurs filled the room when I presented it at the next meeting. Karen turned pale, her hands trembling as I laid out the proof. "You've been stealing from us," I said firmly. "Not just abusing your power, but lining your own pockets with our money." The silence that followed was deafening, until it erupted into outrage. "Remove them," someone shouted. "They all need to go," cried another. It was the tipping point. That night, the community voted to dissolve the current board entirely and hold fresh elections. For the first time in years, homeowners had hope. They wanted new leadership, people who cared about the neighborhood instead of their own egos. And to my surprise, several neighbors urged me to run. At first, I resisted. "I'm not interested in politics," I told them. "I just wanted to be left alone." But one woman shook her head. "That's exactly why you should lead. We need someone who doesn't crave power. Someone who'll protect us from people like them." Her words struck a chord. Maybe she was right. Maybe the best way to protect myself, and everyone else, wasn't just to fight the HOA but to become the HOA. Karen, of course, fought back with every ounce of venom left in her. She campaigned ruthlessly, spreading lies about me, claiming I wanted to bankrupt the community. But this time, her words rang hollow. People had seen the truth with their own eyes. On election day, the results came in, Karen and her allies were voted out. And I, reluctantly, but unanimously, was voted in as the new HOA president. Standing at the podium that evening, looking out at the faces of my neighbors, I felt a mix of pride and responsibility. "This isn't about me," I told them. "It's about all of us." The HOA was meant to serve the community, not rule over it. And from this day forward, that's exactly what it will do. The applause that followed wasn't just for me. It was for the end of an era. For the first time in a long while, the neighborhood finally felt like home again. The HOA board thought that by ousting me from the neighborhood association meetings, they had clipped my wings. What they didn't realize was that I had been building my own case, brick by brick, piece by piece, until it was an unshakable wall. And now, the time had come to bring it crashing down on them. The tension in the air was thick when the judge banged her gavel, announcing the ruling in my lawsuit. The courtroom was filled with spectators, neighbors, local reporters, and even a few members of other HOAs who had been watching this battle unfold. It wasn't just about me anymore. This case had become symbolic of what so many residents across the country had suffered in silence: HOA boards that abused their power, silenced dissent, and lined their own pockets with the hard-earned money of homeowners. I sat forward in my seat as the judge read the verdict. The court finds the HOA board guilty of financial mismanagement, harassment, and abuse of power. Effective immediately, the current board is dissolved, and restitution must be made to the residents. In addition, Mr. Bennett is to be compensated for the damages caused to his property and personal well-being. The words rang in my ears like music. I had won. The board members sat frozen, their smug expressions melting into disbelief. The president, Mr. Dawson, the ringleader of their corruption, went pale, his knuckles gripping the table in front of him. He opened his mouth to protest, but the judge cut him off sharply. "This court has seen the evidence. Your time of intimidating residents is over. Bailiff, remove them." The room erupted in murmurs, some gasps, and then cheers. My neighbors stood, clapping, some even with tears in their eyes. They weren't just celebrating my victory, they were celebrating their own freedom. That night, I sat on my porch with a glass of bourbon, finally breathing freely. The cool air felt different, lighter. The constant anxiety, the letters, the fines, the threats, all of it was behind me. Or so I thought. The next morning, I received a call from the county office. "Mr. Bennett, we're reaching out to inform you that the building where the HOA board used to operate has been listed for sale. We understand you had legal claims against their assets, and with the settlement, you're in a position to purchase it if you'd like." At first, I laughed. The idea of buying the very building where they had plotted against me seemed poetic, almost too good to be true. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized it wasn't just an opportunity for revenge, it was a chance to turn their symbol of control into a beacon of fairness. So I did it. Within weeks, the papers were signed. The office that once held their meetings now belonged to me. I renovated the space, not into another cold, bureaucratic HOA office, but into a community hub where neighbors could come together without fear or judgment. A place where disputes could be settled fairly, where transparency ruled, and where every homeowner had a voice. And when the county held a vote for a new HOA president, the neighbors, almost unanimously, chose me. Standing at the podium during my first official meeting as president, I looked out at the faces of the people who had stood by me, endured with me, and finally triumphed with me. "I promise you," I said, my voice steady, "this will never again be a place of fear. We will not weaponize rules, we will not abuse authority, and we will never forget that this community belongs to the people who live here, not a handful of power-hungry board members." The room erupted in applause. It wasn't just about winning anymore. It was about rewriting the story. What started as a battle for my own dignity had turned into a movement for fairness, justice, and respect for everyone. Weeks later, I walked past Dawson's old house. The man who once strutted around the neighborhood as if he owned every brick and blade of grass now avoided eye contact, his pride shattered. Part of me wanted to gloat, but instead, I gave him a polite nod and kept walking. Because true revenge isn't about lowering yourself to their level, it's about rising so high above them that they can never touch you again. And as the sun set that evening, casting a warm glow over the neighborhood that had once been a battlefield, I realized something. I hadn't just defeated the HOA board. I had become the leader they never could be, the kind who served instead of ruled, who listened instead of silenced, and who built instead of destroyed. For the first time in years, this place finally felt like home.